Finally, the new dampers are here. Thrustmaster way back in 2024 introduced the AVA flight stick base, and my review of that was fairly positive. But there was one thing I always thought was missing, and that was the damper. Well, Thrustmaster just released the damper and a few other accessories, including a 120mm extension, a 240mm curved extension, and a new set of cams. We'll go through each of these to give you a sense of what's on offer and how much of a difference they actually make. Okay, first off the bat, the extensions. And why might you want an extension? Well, using an extension will give you way more precise control over your inputs. It really does make a big difference. No matter what brand or type of extension you get, it's going to make those fine inputs much easier to make. In the case of what Thrustmaster have launched, there is a 120mm extension and a 240mm curved extension. Let's start off with the 120mm. It's a full metal extension pole and collar. The Thrustmaster grip will attach directly to the top, and you have these little screws on the top, these little hex nuts that you can loosen and you can adjust the angle of the grip. So that all depends on whether you want to have it mounted on the right or mounted on the center. Both extensions also come with these extra strong springs, which are there to replace your existing springs inside the AVA base. And you need these because of the extra leverage created by the extension. So thumbs up for including that. The 120mm extension comes in at $50 US. Now the value based on that is going to depend on your use case. From my perspective, they are squeezing the most out of the price there. It's probably at the top end of what I'd expect to pay, but again, all this changes depending on your setup and how often you fly and how much you'll appreciate that extra control. Now it's worth noting at this point that the AVA base does come with different sized deflection masks, which is this internal plastic part here. These essentially limit the travel of the stick, especially when using any type of extension. Otherwise, using an extension without a narrower deflection mask would mean that the movement is just far too big. And when I was testing, I found the medium mask was good for me. Now the 240mm curved extension. This is the one I think most people will be interested in, as it helps with bending around your seat and can allow you, depending on your setup, to get the stick in a much more natural or realistic position. This curved extension is only really for a center stick setup and has cyclic for flying helicopters written all over it. I don't fly choppers, but still it's great for flying planes if you need the extra room to get it up and around over the seat lip. One thing this extension doesn't have, and this ties back to only having it mounted in the center, is an adjustable angle. This really is just designed for a center mount, and as such, it's got a locked in 20 to 30 degrees of angle designed directly into the mount. The 240mm extension comes in at $70 US. For my setup, this is the one I would get, but $70 is a little steep. However, when you look at the cost of Virpils, which is $90, I'm kind of thinking maybe not so much. So if you fly choppers or old warbirds or even fighter jets, the AVA curved extension would be my pick. Couple that with a medium or small deflection mask and it's gold. Moving on, we have the new cams. The original AVA base came with two sets, Aero and Jet. The Aero cams were my favourite and gave the base a super slick and smooth feel. I said it over a year ago and I'll say it again, probably the smoothest stick and base I've ever used, closely followed by the Virpil Warbird. So the new cam set actually consists of 3 cams, 2 fly-by-wire cams and 1 dual pitch cam. Now, I don't know what the benefit of the dual pitch cam is. I don't know what it's trying to replicate. So if anybody knows, fill me in on the comments. As for the fly-by-wire cams, they feel good. A bit more of a pronounced notch, or smooth notch. I think notch might be the wrong word, but it's smooth through the centre. And it's been designed directly into the feel of this. There is no grain. They are super smooth and polished, just what you would expect. And at the same level as the original cams that came with the base unit. It's time for the slightly more juicy part, the dampers. This was my biggest criticism of the AVA in my original review, which I'll link in the description. And that was over a year ago, and honestly, I thought they had forgotten about this. It's just been so long. So the dampers get attached underneath the cover on both axes, and these will add an extra sense of weight. And in the case of Thrustmaster's dampers for the AVA, they work quite well. Firstly, I'll say that they are a little bit fidgety to install. It's not hard, but it will take you a good 5 to 10 minutes while watching the instruction video that they provide. You're only going to do this once though, so it's not really what I would call an issue. What could be frustrating is having to remove the cover every time you want to get access to make adjustments. And again, I'm not sure how often you would do that, but just keep that in mind. So after having taken the cover off, the dampening effect can be adjusted with an Allen key. It's clockwise to tighten or increase and anti-clockwise to loosen it off. Now, if you over tighten the dampers, you will start to feel a little bit of what's commonly called stiction. This is when the stick just ever so slightly sticks when you change direction. It does make quite a big difference to the feel. It adds a sense of weight while still being super smooth, which the AVA is renowned for. My favourite setup for having all of this gear is to use the newer extra strong springs that were supplied with the 240mm extension, then running the damper just shy of what you might call full. I also then tighten the springs so that they're only just returning the stick back to the centre, no more. This for me created one of, or maybe even the smoothest stick around, which has, I'll say it again, always been AVA's strong point, even without any of these accessories. So what do I make of everything Thrustmaster released here? Well, first off, I think it was needed. Both extensions are great depending on your setup. The new cams are just going to give you a different feel, so that's very subjective, but they are super smooth and in line with the originals. The dampers, although slightly tricky to install, make a good upgrade to anyone that has an existing AVA base and just wants to feel more weight through the stick. If you fly choppers and we're looking for that cyclic non-return effect, you could maybe get it with a bit of DIY, but certainly not out of the box, and that's something I haven't tested. Overall, a nice set of add-ons from Thrustmaster. The build quality on all this stuff is really quite good, and it does what it says on the tin. If you have the AVA, I reckon the most interesting out of these is the damper followed by the 240mm extension. Flying planes, it's great. Flying choppers and want the non-return cyclic, you might want to check out some other options.